Today we're starting a two-part series. Strap on your gear because we're going for a ride. That was such a good introduction. Hey guys, welcome to Flurn. My name is Aaron Nace. You can find me all up on Twitter at AKNacer. Today we got a really cool image. It's from one of our contest winners, Afir, and he took this image at a high speed sync. So he went out there, set up some lights, and got his buddy going on very fast coming around this corner and made sure to capture that motion. And now we're going to be editing it on Flurn. This is going to be a two-part episode because there's a lot to go through. But by the end of it, you are just going to be so good at this that you're going to have all the confidence in the world to do whatever you want. So let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to do part one, be about 15 minutes, and then part two, I don't know, as long as it takes to finish it. So what we were going to do with this image, I want to kind of first start by identifying some of the things that can be done really cool with this. First thing that I've thought of when I was first looking at this image is the toning. Like this could definitely be a good case for some dual toning or split toning using like the teal orange. So we'll just write that down, teal orange. This is a really good color tone like for images like this when you have a lot of darks, and it's also great when you have like technology. Think of the movies like Drive. They use this teal orange color combination quite frequently to achieve that test. If you want to switch it more to like a yellow blue, that you can do too, but that's going to be done here in the highlights would be the orange or yellow, and here in the shadows are going to be the teal or the blue. So we're going to kind of play around with that. The other thing looking at this is I like the atmosphere that's going on here. I don't see a whole lot of detail here in the front of the bike. You can see how, let's just delete that. You can see how right back here I can see the outline of the bike and everything, and I can see what's going on. And we've also got a rim light which is cutting our subject out. But here in the front I don't really see that change of detail, and so what that kind of tells me is like we need a way to separate that out so I can really just focus on our biker. Now we've also got some cool things we can do with the sky, and because he is moving incredibly fast, we're going to add rain and fog and atmosphere into this. It's going to like probably blow your mind, and we're going to do all that in a two-part episode. So let's go ahead and get into it, but I like to have a little bit of a plan before I start, so I'm like, okay, cool, I know what I'm doing. The first thing we're going to start off with in this case is actually color toning, and the reason is because I want to get that dialed in. I know I'm going to color tone this image. I want to get that really dialed in early on, and that way I'll be able to tell what I want to do afterwards and how those colors are going to affect each other. So to do it, we're going to start off, I'm going to grab an adjustment layer right here, and we're going to go up to solid color. And it's going to fill your entire image with a solid color. We're going to start off with our shadows. So let's get like a bluish green, something like this, and a nice shadow color. And we're going to hit OK. And we're going to change our blending mode. So let's change this from normal down to color, and it's going to just color our entire image like that. Now, this will give you a pretty good idea of whether the color you chose is the right color or not, but we're going to save that for just a little bit. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to make this visible in our shadows, because we want these like blue or teals visible in the shadows and the oranges or yellows in the highlights. So we're going to double click right outside here, and now we're going to go to our blend if on our layer style, and here in the underlying layer I'm going to hold Alt or Option and go from the right to the left, which is going to make this layer not visible where the underlying layer has highlights. So now we can see it's only visible there in the shadows, which is a lot of dark area. So now we can go in and change the color if we want, just to a little bit better color. So let's double click here, and we'll go to our color picker, and now I can just take it a little bit lower, and I can take it desaturated or more saturated. Something right about there is going to look pretty good. So already you can see we got that like cool tone. So we've taken care of our shadows. Let's go ahead and get our highlights as well. I'm going to grab an adjustment layer. We're going to do solid color again. Choose a nice yellow. Again, it doesn't matter. I'm going to choose a green just to show you that right now it doesn't really matter what color you choose because you can always change it later. We're going to change this from normal down here to color. Double click here, and this time I want this to be visible in the highlights, not the shadows. So I'm going to go from the left to the right. Alt or Option, click here and go from the left to the right. And there we can see it's only visible on our highlights, right? It's not the right color. We did that on purpose. So all you have to do is double click here, and it's just going to allow you to change your hue. And you can just kind of scroll on down till you find the hue that you like. And there we go. That yellow looks pretty good. Let's just be sure to desaturate it just a bit. And there we go. So that's a pretty nice yellow. You can now change with the balance of the image just by lowering the opacity of these. So I can like bring down the opacity of that just a bit because it was kind of overwhelming, and I can bring this up as well. I can also say, you know what, I'd like this visible only in the lightest of the lights. So how you do that is you're going to go double click on this again, and here where we made this not visible in the darks, we'll show you just right there. Here where we made this layer not visible in the darks, I'm going to hold Alt or Option. We're going to go from the left to the right again, same thing, but now you can grab this guy and kind of decide where it wants to be. So you can see, especially here with our sky, look at that. Here it's like filling in the highlights, and then it's just kind of like backing on down. So you can really just control where you want this color to show up at. And I think somewhere right about there really starts to look pretty good. It starts to like take over the image. All right, and now we can kind of play with our color balance. We can see, you know what, is this the right hue? You can click on your hue and use your up arrows or down arrows to change your hue. And if you hold down the Shift key, then it's going to allow you to move 10 places at a time. So just a little bit quicker. All right, and here we have our, let's see, I just changed the color a little bit. We'll hit OK, and then I hit Command Z, and then Command Z again to just go back and forward. But I like it with a little bit more of that teal color in there. All right, guys, that was really not too incredibly hard. We've got 2 color fill layers. We picked our own colors, and then we made some visible where the highlights and the shadows are. And already we can see this image is quite a bit different. So we've already done quite a bit, and it really didn't take too long. Now, the next couple of things that I want to do are things that are going to help our biker stand out from the background. So I'm going to shift click the 2 of these layers, hit Command or Control G, and we're going to double click, and I'm going to call this color. Okay, so we mentioned earlier that we were going to do our color first because it'll help us kind of gauge the rest of the image. So we're going to be creating layers now between the color layer and the background. And let's just go ahead and create a new layer like that. So between the color layer and the background. Now, here what we want to do is I'm going to zoom in, and we can see there's really not a lot of separation there. So I'm going to use our pen tool to actually aid us in separating this from the background. Let's just turn our color layer off just for a second so I can kind of see what we're doing. Now we're going to hit the pen tool. If you're here on Flurn, there are a lot of episodes using the pen tool. Just go up to the tools section right above this video, and then go down to the pen tool, or sorry, the tags, and then go to the pen tool, and you'll find more. Basically, we're just going to cut this out. It's not that hard to do. We're going to click here, and I'm going to just kind of like click and drag here. Now, when you click and drag, you control the shape of your curves. So I can kind of control where these are. If I hold down the Control key, I can click on any point and move it around the image. So here we go. We've kind of like just holding down the Control key. Now we're making a curve that goes up just like that one did there. I'm going to click here, hold Alt or Option, and that'll just change one side of your curve. There we go. We're going to click a couple points there to kind of make a straight line. Now, if you do have a curve and it's not a complex curve, it only has one curve in it, if it's not like an S curve, just like this over here, you can take care of it in kind of just one go. So I'm going to click over here and drag up, and then I'm going to hold Alt or Option and drag this out, and there we go. So we just took care of the entire curve there of I guess what's a fender. I don't really know much about bikes. We're going to take care of the entire curve there with just one pen stroke. So that's the way you would want to do it. You don't want to create like a bunch of little ones going off. It's going to be far less accurate. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is just kind of click right here, hold Control or Command, and pull up there. And now I've got a control point from there as well. So that's really it. I don't need to do much more because I've selected out the front of the bike. So we've got that. I just kind of like close the selection. I'm going to right click and go to Make Selection. We're going to feather this by about 0.3 pixels. Okay, so now we have a selection. I'm on this new layer, and with a large brush tool, what I'm going to do is just paint with about 20% flow here. I'm going to hold B for the brush, hit B for the brush tool, Alt or Option to sample this color here in the background, and then I'm just going to paint it in a little bit. All right, and this is going to look like atmospheric fog, basically, is what I did. So then I just deselected, and you can turn this off and on. Now, if you're worried about it darkening anything, just change your layer mode from normal to lighten, and it'll make sure it won't darken anything because it's supposed to be atmospheric fog that's catching like light. So technically, it cannot darken anything. It has to only lighten. But if you had something a little bit lighter behind it, it might darken it down. So just make sure you keep it in mind. We're going to lower our opacity here just a little bit because we don't need it to stand off a ton, but just a little bit like that is going to really help separate it out from the background. All right, now that we've done that, we're going to go ahead and take care of some of the light and some of the dark areas that are in the image just to kind of like make it a bit more dynamic. For that, we're going to turn our color layer back on. Ooh, and you know, when I just turn my color layer back on, it's like, wow, that's way too saturated. It just kind of doesn't look as good as I thought I did. There's a great way you can actually check your colors just by turning it off and then turning it back on, or like stepping away for a few minutes and coming back. It's really hard to tell color very well when you kind of get like caught looking in it. So I'm just going to fix that. I'm going to go to Hue Saturation, Adjustment Layer, and we're just going to lower the saturation just a bit. All right, so now that looks a little bit more natural to me. Maybe we'll work on our lights and our darks. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to create a Curves Adjustment Layer. Okay, and let's go ahead and group these two layers together. So I'm going to hit Shift and Command G to group them together. Let's create a Curves Adjustment Layer that brings some areas down in brightness. So I'm going to just pull this here, right down in brightness. And it's just going to give us this like cool, like kind of gritty effect. Now, we're going to use our layer mask. So I'm going to hit Command I on my layer mask, and then I'm just going to paint this in. And you do want this to be below your color layer, because if it's not below your color layer, this will not show up. Like, it'll go dark, but it'll go to black instead of this like dark teal that we've defined. So just make sure your color layers are above everything. All right, and right now I'm just painting. I've got a 20% flow on my brush, which allows it to build up as I paint. There we go. And I'm just kind of filling this in over and over again. So you can see it's a little bit more visible on the right side there. This is what my layer mask looks like now. A little bit less visible here on the left. And the reason is we've got a nice light coming from our left, and we want to make sure that it really does kind of like show through. So we can see just by like altering the road a little bit, we're getting more of that like gritty effect. There we go. We're getting more of the gritty effect we kind of just talked about. And at the same time, we're kind of drawing some more attention back towards the sun, which is what we wanted. All right, and we can darken that down there too. Just make sure you don't darken too much, or it's just going to look a little bit weird. We do want the kind of gritty effect here, but we don't want it looking just weird. If you're afraid you've done it too much, you can just lower your opacity a little bit, and you're good to go. There we go. And that's looking pretty good. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is, I think we're just going to jump right in. I want to create a light for this motorcycle. I want to make sure it has the light in the front is going to be on, and we're going to do that, and then we're going to cut it and resume back in section 2, where you're going to learn all kinds of other cool stuff. All right, let's make a new layer. Shift Option Command N, we'll do that. And I'm going to make I'm going to hit my lasso tool. So we're going to go over here to our polygonal lasso tool, and I'm going to create a shape that basically looks like the light beam would come out of a headlight. When you're done, just hit Enter, and it'll combine that together. Now, that's our headlight shape. I'm going to just go ahead and grab an adjustment layer and go to Curves. We're just going to drag that up. There we go. Now, with this Curves adjustment layer, basically what that did is just made that area brighter. And when you have a selection and you load an adjustment layer, it automatically loads that selection into the layer mask. So this is our Curves adjustment layer. Now, I know it doesn't look very good right now because it needs quite a bit of work, but it's almost there. So I'm going to hit Command J on this twice. I'll explain why in just a little bit. When you have a shining light, like a beam of light, you tend to get more intense in the middle of the light and like where the light is than as it feathers out. So by creating duplicates of these, I'm going to put one on the outside, and then I'm going to feather them inside, so we get more intensity on the middle than on the outsides. All right, let's go ahead and start with our first shape. We're going to make this smaller. So I'm going to hit Command T, and then you can just scale this down just like that. And we have some intensity, a little bit of a core to our light, if you will. There we go. And let's make this guy visible as well. Command T, and I'm just going to scale this down, holding Shift as well as Option here. Okay, and then this we want to be super small. So you could just do this if you wanted to just grab your lasso tool and just make these shapes as, on your own. You could totally do that too. This is just kind of a way of saying, like, this is a bit more of a scientific way. Okay, now I just see, like, do they point where I want them to point? Let's shift click those, and I'm going to hit Command G. I'm going to hit Command T to transform them, and then I'm going to bring my transform point right over here to the left so I can kind of control where they're going. And then I'm just going to like point it up and down, because I think it was just pointed up a little bit too much before. There we go. So that's going to be our shape now. We'll just close that, or open the group again, and then I'm going to add a blur to these. So we're going to go to Filter, Blur, and down to Gaussian Blur. And the outermost gets the largest blur. Then this guy gets a blur as well. Perfect. And this guy in the middle gets a blur as well. Maybe a little bit less of a blur. I do want a little bit less of a blur, but you can see how it looks too weird on the right. It's not like decaying the right way. So I'm going to grab my brush tool and just paint black at about 20% there to like have it decay a little bit better. All right, there we go. Looking good. So what we've got here, let's just zoom out, is a headlight that's kind of on. It's not perfect just yet. We're still going to do work to it in part 2, but it's getting there. And you can see how each of these is really important. With just one layer, it looks flat. Just this layer, it looks too small. Just this layer, there's just a little point. So we can see how it builds up on itself. And I always recommend when you're making a light source or something like this, do it in a few different layers because it's going to look a lot more like a natural light. All right, there's one more thing that I want to do with this, and that's to create like a little bit of a lens flare. So what we're going to do is I'm going to create a new layer, Shift-Option-Command-N, Shift-Option-Command-E for Stamp Visible. Now I'm going to go to Filter, I'm going to go to Render, and I'm going to go to Lens Flare. And I'm going to choose the lens flare to be visible right where this guy is. We can change our brightness if we want. Let's hit OK. So we've got a lens flare there that's visible on the image. But the problem with the lens flare, in my opinion, is that it's stuck to this layer. See, as I move it around, it's kind of stuck to this layer. But there is a workaround. I'm going to hit Shift-Delete, fill this layer with black, and then I'm going to go to Filter, and then right here, if you hit Command-F, it's going to redo the same filter you just did previously. So we're going to hit Lens Flare again. It's going to put the same lens flare in the same place. And now to get rid of the black, I'm going to just change this from normal down to screen. So instead of a lens flare being visible just on that Stamp Visible layer, it's now on a black layer. And the reason I like that is because now I can go through and I can lower the opacity of just the lens flare if I'd like. Not only that, but if it's too visible, I can add a blur to my lens flare. So I'm going to go to Gaussian Blur, and now we can just give it a little bit of a blur. It'll be not so Photoshoppy. It'll just look a little bit more realistic. Not only that, but if I'd like to add a layer mask to it and paint away some parts of this lens flare just to make it even more realistic looking, I can do that as well. So those are the 3 things that I would like to do whenever I'm creating a light source. Just make sure you put these, excuse me, create a few different layers and don't use the lens flare on its own layer. So that is, we started with this, and in just a few minutes, we're already here. And that's it for part 1, guys. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions, leave them in a comment down below. If you have any images that this would work on, please leave those in a comment down below as well. Join us for part 2, where we're going to finish this up. Thanks, guys. I'll flern you later. I'll flern you later. You don't even want to know what flerned later means. It's like stale cheese that's been out in the sun for a week, and there's, it just smells horrible. For more information on this episode, go to flern.com. While you're there, be sure to check out our pro tutorials. These are the most in-depth Photoshop tutorials available on the internet. If you want one for free, just sign up for our newsletter following the link right down below, and it'll be delivered to you instantly. We also feature exclusive interviews, written contents, inspiration from people like you, as well as professional photographers, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel.